I guess we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. And I want to make a huge thank you to the Sustainable Angle and the Future Fabrics Expo, because this show is just fantastic. And I'm so glad you keep coming back to New York and doing these panels so that we can not only see our friends, but meet new people. If I was still in design, I'd be so psyched to come here because this is fully one-stop shopping, and it's just brilliant, so thanks. Okay, so my name is Thomasine, and I am going to be talking about next-gen solutions and next-gen sustainable materials entering the market with our great panelists. I'm going to first start down at the end with Matty. And Matty Friedman, I'm going to have to read these notes because we have some lengthy they're not lengthy, they're quick, but I just don't want to get it wrong. So Matty Friedman is the senior brand and product manager at Sky High Farm Universe. For the New Yorkers here, or the people who read New York Times, I'm sure you saw the article about Sky High Farm earlier this year. It was an incredible piece about this farm in the Hudson Valley. But before Sky High Farm Universe, there was just Sky High Farm, as I just mentioned. Now, Sky High Farm is a nonprofit farm based in Hudson Valley, which I also just said, whose mission is to bring healthy produce to underserved communities. The Universe section, the Universe division, was launched as a way to bring more awareness and financial support to the farm. And again, it does regenerative farming. They launched their seasonal Sky High Farm workwear collection through a partnership with Dover Street Market. That's starting off at a pretty high place. And together they raised over $550,000 for the farm. They have global sales and have partnered with Comme des Garçons Shirt, Balenciaga, Nike, and Erewhon, among others. Matty's background is in fashion buying and brand management, and he worked at Dover Street Market in concepts and versional, where he oversaw footwear, tees, and developing designer businesses. So now on to Liz. I bet a lot of you know Liz Alessi already. So Liz, shout out to Liz. Liz has over 20 years as in the fashion business as a sourcing executive, working with limited brands, Marc Jacobs, Coach, and Tapestry, where she oversaw all the materials from concept to production. Her passion for sustainability led to the Coach Reloved program, which was big news and was a big hit. And she was also a founding member of Coachtopia, managing materials and circular solutions. Liz has firsthand experience in working with next-gen innovation materials, which is how I got to meet her, and which is why she's such a key member of this panel, or in sustainability in general. And in 2021, she began her own consultancy, which studies and applies innovative materials through a circularity lens and advises brands and innovators on environmentally preferred choices, design choices, and extending a product's lifespan through end-of-life solutions. And then we have Hannes Schoenegger, and Hannes is the co-founder of Bananatex, which I hope you saw Bananatex back there. It's brilliant. It's so beautiful. I mean, even in its raw form, it's beautiful. Hannes is from Innsbruck, Austria, and he's created, with his team, he's created the first technical fabric made of 100% banana fiber. Originally pioneered by the Swiss bag brand called Question, they did it for its own range of backpacks and bags, but now it's commercially available to all brands. Bananatex was founded in 2018, and it won several international awards for outstanding material development and circularity. It's 100% natural, completely plastic-free, vegan, and certified compostable. It's also Cradle to Cradle Gold certified, has a lot of other certifications and awards as well. It could be another 5 minutes just looking at that. And lastly, I have Maria Intscher-Owrang. Maria is the co-founder of Simplifyber, but prior to that, she was, I don't know if you're still designing, she was a luxury fashion designer specializing in runway. And over those 24 years of designing, she worked both in Europe and the US. And the US brand she worked for, among others, Vera Wang, Calvin Klein, and also for the ethical and sustainable brand Eden, which was I love that brand. That was a really interesting brand. After graduating from London's prestigious Central St. Martin's fashion program, she started her career at Alexander McQueen. That's a pretty big start. In 2006, she started working in sustainable fashion, and this is when Maria envisioned a more automated way to work with natural fibers, and by 2020, she had founded Simplifyber. Simplifyber, I hope you'll get a chance to see that on the innovation table. It's also a really brilliant innovation and a new way forward to envision things. It's a first of its kind in manufacturing process, and it uses all plant-based fibers. I think that's the key. You would look at it and you wouldn't necessarily think plants, but it's also using, well, we'll get into the inputs a little bit later, but the feedstocks for these materials are really fascinating. They're entirely 3D shaped uppers that can be used for accessories, bags, footwear, as the shoe she's wearing, and there's a pair of sneakers on the table back there. But her process totally eliminates the need for spinning, weaving, knitting, and sewing, and with this 3D modeling. And it's also, importantly, it's going to be cost competitive, or it is cost competitive with polyester and plastics. Woo! And they're in Raleigh, North Carolina. Sorry.
Wow, that was great.
Oh my God. Sorry. Okay. Thank you for staying. I'm going to begin with our innovators, with Hannes and Maria. And just briefly, if you could touch on your I've had enough already moment of when you decided to, I want to get off of this cycle of making. Well, you were in fashion, and you weren't necessarily in fashion, so you had a totally different path. But Maria, maybe you could start.
Sure. So after being a designer for 24 years, and especially since I worked in sustainable fashion starting in 2006, I just saw the industry shift away from natural materials and towards fossil-based materials. And I also really saw the industry change in terms of manufacturing, or rather not change, but I guess the change came with outsourcing. It just seemed like this was a really outdated way to make everything. Maybe some things it's okay, but not for everything. Cutting and sewing and knitting, these are methods of production and supply chains from 200 years ago. And I decided to address both of these problems in one go, because what Simplifyber is it's a way to use natural materials in a more automated system. And really the point of it is to make natural materials compete at a cost level with polyester. And you're only going to do that by changing the system of production. If you're starting with inherently more expensive materials and you put them in the same system, they're always going to be more expensive. So that's really the idea of where we started. And I was so fed up that I wanted this technology to finally happen. I'd been looking for it and it didn't exist.
And Hannes, how did you, I don't want to say stumble upon the banana fiber, which is, talk about that and how you came upon that.
Sure. Well, as you already said, we come from the industry side. We ran a backpack brand out of Switzerland, and we decided to work with plant-based materials in a world full of plastics. And the banana fiber was actually the fourth or the fifth step in our journey after working with hemp and bamboo and linen and some other trials. We came over that source, and the banana fiber we work with is actually the strongest plant fiber we have seen so far. But there were like lots of applications for it, shipping ropes, paper making, things like that. But no one made a fine yarn up to that date, so that was our focus. And then we kind of managed to make a fine yarn and a textile out of it, which we used for our bags. But being a small brand, we thought it's a good idea to share it with others, and therefore we announced it as a kind of an open source innovation. And luckily, we work with some major brands now, from footwear to furniture. The Stella McCartney, Balenciaga, some others.
Yeah, I love
Sky High Farms.
Yeah. No, the Stella bag I love, and actually, there's a rack of some apparel items back there, which are really, really beautiful. They're very special. And also, if you get the chance to go to Bananatex's website, because there's a really beautiful film that shows you the process, and it's pretty fascinating. It's a really gorgeous process, and you understand it, which is important. And also, I definitely recommend going on Simplifyber's website, because you can see the 3D molding process. So you mentioned the types of end products that can be made with Bananatex. So footwear, fashion, bags, etc. What about Simplifyber?
So Simplifyber, it's not just it's not just for fashion, it's grounded in fashion. We started there. It's very good for shoes, bags, but we also just made a car dash a couple of weeks ago. And it was on the exact same machinery as the other stuff. And we're also looking at other types of consumer products because we see this as a way to get rid of a lot of plastic in the world and replace a lot of the plastic out there.
And also, I know the auto industry has been pretty bullish on sampling and experimenting with next-gen materials, especially because of the EV revolution, and they need everything to be lighter than the existing materials. And so I'm wondering, is Simplifyber, is it lighter for?
It's a little bit lighter, especially because you don't need as many seams. So there's an impact there. Right, and you can kind of program it to be as dense or as rigid as you want. So there's that, but I think also a lot of the regulations that we're seeing happening in fashion are also starting to happen in the auto industry, or they're coming in the auto industry. So a lot of the goals from these companies tend to align really well with that of fashion.
Maria, I just want to stick one more question with you, and I'm going to spend a lot of time with Matty and Liz, so don't worry. I just want to get through some of these feedstocks because they're really fascinating. Maria, if you could mention the inputs you use for, because I think that's a really, really key point of why your prices can be competitive, and also, well, go ahead, just you start with that, what their inputs are.
Sure. Okay. So this is a cellulose product. We're using as the raw material fibers. So we don't have to buy fabric or yarn, and because of that, we're buying these materials at the beginning of the supply chain. And in terms of types of cellulose that we can use, we've used everything from wood pulp to recycled clothing. We used recently Renewcell Circulose. We've used Evernew Circ. We're looking always for more recycled clothing sources. We've also used, hemp. We've used recycled paper. So lots of different inputs, and it's really designed to be a flexible system because cellulose is one of the most basic common organic compounds on Earth, and that's a strength.
So textile waste.
Yeah, textile waste.
So
yeah.
Liz, I mean, that's sort of like feeds into your focus. I mean, I'm sure because you're here, you already know a lot about what's happening with textile waste, and we have like 94 million tons globally of textile waste and not enough places to put it to make it into something else. So do you want to address waste and what, like, these are incredible solutions when you can turn that, and what you've been doing with
I mean, I think there are so many incredible solutions, including Simplifyber and what you see out here. This is a great show. I'm happy to see everyone come out to this because we really do need to make a shift. And I'm working at a brand for 25 years, a multi-billion-dollar different brands. It's really difficult. But we have to do it, and there are solutions that exist today that you can see out here. So take the first step if you're a brand and give it a shot and really work together and collaborate, and we'll be able to get there. But in terms of like waste feedstocks, I have a waste hierarchy theory that I can share with you. And it starts with repair and reuse, and then it goes to donation, and then it goes to reusing the textile if the end product no longer has life to it. So like recutting a pair of jeans into, for example, a Coach handbag, which we just did, which was awesome, and a Converse sneaker, that's true, with Sky High. And then it would go into textile recycling and then downcycling. But I really feel strongly about going through the value hierarchy and also reframing textile waste as not waste. It's really a value, and even where we think it has no value, it absolutely has value as a feedstock to Maria's process and to many other things that you see here.
Yeah, that's my favorite mantra lately, is valorizing waste. You know, I love that, like just giving it new importance. And so, Matty, this is a perfect segue because of some of how Sky High Universe started, because you're upcycling, and well, you can tell us about your early collections and
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. And yeah, I think that, Sky High Farm universe, we didn't start off with making, full work suits with Bananatex. We've evolved to that place, and we really started off as an upcycling brand. And we believe that there's enough good stuff out in the world that already exists. We just need to re-imbue it and give it value, whether that's sourcing a vintage t-shirt and screen printing on it and selling it with our logo, or whether that's getting all of that material and grinding it into something that we can repurpose and use. So we really started off as a brand that just did vintage. We eventually, after launching our vintage program, we started making dead stock product out of dead stock materials. So we worked with Comme des Garçons and Dover Street Market to source different fabrics that were just kind of sitting in warehouses in Europe that we could repurpose and upcycle, or repurpose and just use that dead stock to fabricate what we were doing. And then eventually that led into the idea of scale and wanting to repeat products and to make things that were the same. And in order to do that, we have to start, looking at different material innovators.
Right.
And getting to
That's
that
exactly
point.
actually how I wanted to, the lead I needed for the next question, which is when you're collaborating and working with another brand and the materialization part of it. Like, is it a combination of ideas that have, or are they bringing the material part of it, or you're both sourcing materials and knowing that your end goal is to have the sustainable thing, right? But it's got to be super cool and it's got to be saleable. And so, could you talk about that collaboration process when it comes to materialization?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's different depending on which collaborator that we work with. Each one is different. I think some are looking to launch a certain material with us. There's a lot of these big companies that might not necessarily switch all of a certain product over to a sustainable alternative because there's a lot of different things that they have to, people that they have to answer to, margins and things like that. But they're able.
Do you try to push for that, or are you sort of like, oh, we really need the business?
Well, I think that Sky Farm Universe can be that catalyst for change within those companies, and to be the person that really launches that program and then has everybody catch on to it and to be the norm. So we're hoping to inspire that change. But I think it depends. Some companies come to us with a different material that we want to use. Other times we, do a little bit of research on our own. I have my ace in the crowd, Grant, over there, who has a big sustainability background. So we do a lot of research on our own as well.
Oh, that's awesome to hear.
Can I pipe in on that too? Because I think I would like to give a shout out to Sky High for the three-way collab, which is one of, I think, the best ways to get innovations scaled at brands, is bringing in a cool factor such as Sky High Farms and let's say like big brands, Nike, something like that, and then an innovation, and connecting those three dots is, I think you guys have done an amazing job, and I would love to see more of that out there.
Thank you.
Totally agree. I was going to get to that, actually, Liz. A couple of cards.
Sorry, but you want us to be piping in.
The next question is for you, actually. Based on your experience with being at a brand, for so many years, and because I know you worked with innovators and sustainable innovators, what were you looking for? Or what were what were you asking of them, and what were just the whole menu of what you were looking when you were, they want to send you materials, and I'm sure you had a checklist and when it comes to like performance and price and availability, but what?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times we get hung up on the financial value of something. So when an innovation comes through the door, if you're working for a public company, you have a fiduciary duty to deliver to your shareholders. You're not just like a mean person that just wants to buy more plastic. Well, maybe some people are, but not me. So, you think about the financial value that's coming through the door, like how much does it cost? But if the innovation can deliver a value on top of what you're already buying, so if it's actually a better product that the innovator is providing, that provides longevity value, or maybe even emotional value if they care about it more, or if there's physical performance advantages to using some of these innovations, that's when you're gonna, I think, you see a switch in the sourcing and R&D teams, because then they can go and sell it to the teams, as it's actually gonna make a better finished product. And what I think, a lot of innovators really need to bear in mind, that they're not selling a finished product. they're selling a material that's going to go into a finished product, and the brand has to sell that finished product. And when we buy things because they're beautiful, and we can't walk out of the store without having them. So we have to make sure that with all of this, we're connecting the dots with beauty and aesthetic and the value that I talked about.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to get a little bit into certifications because I want to find out if this group thinks it's important to get, and I've noticed that a bunch of innovators lately have been coming up with recent, hey, we're USDA bio-based approved, which seems really awesome. Like Tomtex is one, and Keel Labs is one, and who else did I write down? Biofur. So there are a bunch of innovators who have these certifications, and I know that the FSA for forestry, if you're using cellulosics, is really important to have. But I wanted to find out if, as innovators, you feel it's important, and on the brand side, you feel it's important. Does it alleviate some of the concerns, or So whoever wants to jump in with that.
I can jump in real quick. So it's something that, as a small company, just growing, we haven't had the money to focus on that yet. I think this year we will, and it's not because it wasn't, important to us. But as a small company just starting out, you need to, first of all, make it work. And that was our main focus, first of all. But I do think that, coming from my background as a designer, I had the luxury of having done a lot of sustainability research as a designer, but I know that many, many people are kind of operating on the certifications as a vetting agent. And, I get it. Like, if you haven't been able to do the research yourself, or if it's all very confusing, at least that's something standardized that you can fall back on. I never really preferred to follow them that way, but I do understand people using them.
Hannes, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, for us, in the beginning, it wasn't necessary to make any certification efforts because we knew the people in the supply chain and everyone behind it. But when we started sharing the material with H&M, they would, of course, ask, can you prove what you claim? And then we stepped into that, and when we looked at the certification universe, it's really messy, and there are hundreds of certifications, and some of them you would download a form and sign it and upload it again, and then you are certified. It's really totally,
are you serious?
Yeah, it's
That's
meaningless,
shady.
really. So we had to find something that is quite having a reputation and covering all the areas, from energy to water stewardship and social aspects and so on. So we started working with Cradle to Cradle, and it was a very effort needed process. So we spent a lot of time and also budget. So this is definitely an element, especially for a young company and a startup. And then we got the gold certification, and that was fine for some brands. Others didn't ask for it. Some didn't know it. And after 3 years, such a certification would expire, and then you start from zero, basically. Although you don't change the recipe or anything, you would start from zero.
The
same
expiration
cost,
thing,
same
I know
time.
that's, yeah.
It is really a challenging element, I have to say.
Yeah. Liz and Matty, do you feel like there should be a greater organizing principle to certifications? Would that be helpful, or is it just no way because you can't get around the water use certificate, the dyes, the greenhouse gases or whatever? Do you think, or is there a way to sort of coalesce?
I mean, there's definitely some good work going on, like, for example, the textile exchange and consolidating some of these things. But I think, generally speaking, everyone feels strongly that there are just far too many of them. And also, some of them have been, criticized as sort of greenwashy a little bit too. So it's like there's skepticism even around the certifications, and they're so laborious in time. Like, they take too much time from innovators when maybe you only have like 3 or 4 people on your team. So it's like it's really a hindrance to progress in some ways, I think.
But I thought that the certifications, or the thinking would be that if you have certification, you're not greenwashing, right? That is, of course, unless you haven't re-upped for the next year. I guess because things expire. But
But it maybe
you don't
not
think that helps?
greenwashing in terms of like not being truthful, but like, oh, that standard isn't really as good as they say because it's missing X,
Oh.
Y, and Z.
Okay.
So it's more, it's like,
Yeah.
nothing's perfect out there, and so like,
Yeah.
well, this one's better than that one. And frankly,
Yeah.
I find the whole thing boring, and I pay very little attention to it because it's just like it's really, really difficult and messy. I agree with you, very messy.
And Matty, what are your conversations when you're triangulating with the brands and whatever? Like, what do you hear from them?
I will say on the certification side, I'm probably least equipped to answer that part of things, just like in actual certifications. But from the brand perspective and, doing research into farms and different, material makers that we're working with, a lot of them don't have the funds or the means to get those certifications. So to me, it seems like it's not, crucial in the work that, a lot of these farms and innovators are doing. I mean, for example, we're going to be launching a partnership with a bigger brand that's working on sponsoring different farmers and getting them from, getting certification to organic cotton and like transitional cotton. And that work that's being done is just as good, if not better, than a farm that does have that certification. So for me, I think it's, it's hard to answer the question like if the certifications are 100% necessary. I think it's about really knowing the work that the producer that you're working with is doing.
So lastly, on certification, it could be a thumbs up, thumbs down, but LCAs think they're good to have, need to have. It's $50,000, I hear. It's like to do one.
We did a preliminary one. It was really difficult for us because we don't fit in a box. Like, we're replacing a chunk of the supply chain. We're not replacing just one element of it. So it's been really hard to find things to compare with us, and we kind of have to like add things together. And honestly, even besides that, there isn't enough comparison data to really, know what you're doing, and all of the certification all of the LCA platforms are kind of different, and they don't compare very well to each other, and it's a whole rabbit hole. I don't know.
Yeah, it was challenging too. We did an LCA as well in the cradle-to-cradle process. But on the other hand, it was also interesting to learn things that we didn't know before. For example, the impact of dyeing was so much bigger than we expected it to be, and it maybe as an innovator it makes you focusing on other things that you would have done in the first place, and that is actually a positive aspect.
That's a really good call out about the dyes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it has been very educational for us as well. Challenging, but educational.
Yeah, just 100% agree that LCAs are really good if you have comparable data. Like if you're comparing post-consumer denim to virgin denim, like we did with Coach and WSP and Bank and Vogue, it made sense because now we could say, oh, it's an 80% carbon savings, 95% water savings compared to X. But the criticism with the LCAs is that you choose your own scope. So you hope that the LCA provider is giving you the right idea of what you really need to look at, but it can be like tweaked a little. Not tweaked, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, those are great points. Thank you. So I want to spend the next few minutes talking about, or possibly the rest of this conversation, about brand engagement, because I think that this is, where the rubber hits the road, is getting this stuff out into the market. So it's really important to know what the conversations are, I feel, between brands and innovators, and are we all on the same page, and what are folks saying? So that in mind, this is for everyone. So are there consistent, so to the innovators first, I guess, are there consistent things when you're meeting with brands? Are there consistent questions or concerns they have? Or is it all over the place? Just, wondering what those beginning stages of dialogues are like.
Sure. I think for us, no case was like the other. Sometimes you start a conversation with sustainability teams, or sometimes you even start with the design team or with the material buyers, and they have different questions. But maybe one thing that is the elephant in the room, for us at least, is the price. I think the price is always, sooner or later, it's like the biggest thing you discuss with a brand, no matter whether it's a small one or a big one or a luxury one or more like a street fashion brand. And there, I think for us, it's really important to point out that we believe the biggest problem is the difference between the cost and the price. Lots of materials are not high in cost, but they will be high in price if you account everything in, future damage, all the things that should be taken into account. And I think as soon as policy makers will make the regulations that change that, I don't think we will see a lot of scaled up innovative materials within fashion or other industries, because the rules of the games are easy, profit counts and everything else is second.
So when you say government stepping in, you mean things like tariffs and customs, or to de-incentivize the unsustainable things, or?
Yeah, I think the rules need to be responsible production should be rewarded and not punished. And right now it's the other way around.
Yeah.
So yeah, tax on virgin plastics in consumer goods, tax on CO2 in a way that compensates the damage, and all those things needs to be in place. If that's not happening, our system wouldn't allow the change.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned before about who you get to speak with, and again, this is for everyone. Like who's in the room, and who is your? I feel like a lot of times innovators get, the first meeting might be with the sustainability team, or not necessarily. But like, tell me who you want to be in the room versus who is in the room, or do you have to go through several different meetings and pass each litmus test of because like one team has, as you pointed out, Hannes, one team has very different concerns. The product development team or the production team has concerns about, well, where's this going to fit in the supply chain, and designers are just like, but it's so pretty, and so anyway, so yeah, who do you want to be in the room?
Maybe I can just answer really quick. I'll say that as many stakeholders as possible. Like when we're working with a bigger brand, and I'll attribute that to Daphne, who's actually the founder of Sky High Farm Universe over there. Hi, Daph. But we try and get as many people as possible so that we're not having siloed conversations. Because when you're trying to make change within these big organizations, they're going to say, yeah, like let's do it. It sounds awesome. And then they're going to bump it up to someone else who says, yeah, it's cool. And then it's going to get kiboshed like when we're at the goal line. So I think just having as many people as possible and as many stakeholders as possible, just from the brand perspective.
That's a great overview. And then Liz, I wanted you to add on, because the product development team, the PD team, and the production team are probably going to have, to your point about having everyone in the room at the same time, because their needs are going to be, what are they going to be looking for? It's going to be very different from some of the other team members.
Yeah, I think the first thing they're looking for is more time in the day to do their regular job rather than the other thing that you're asking them to do.
So they already don't want to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's exactly what I'm saying. But I think, at these large multi-billion-dollar, public companies, the teams are so incredibly siloed. To even get on the schedule to get them all in the same room is like bananas, right? So, but that's absolutely the way you have to do it. But the product developers are going to be looking for like quality. How does it wear? Fit for purpose. Designers going to be looking for a beautiful aesthetic. And I really do believe that if a leader, someone in the C-suite, creative director, says we're going to do this, then everyone actually will start to do it. So I do believe in the top-down effect, because anyone who's ever worked at a big brand knows that every single function is incredibly siloed, and they don't even know what the hell the other one is doing. Frankly, don't underestimate their lack of communication. So I think that's one, and I also just want to bring up that there's also a really interesting divide that I'm finding between the public companies and the private companies. So if you can get an innovation into a big private company and you just have to talk to the owner, and then that person is oh yeah, we're doing this, it happens like that. Whereas in a big public company, it's just blah, 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 and then there's the whole shareholder fiduciary thing. So it's much more difficult, which is why the three-way collab is so smart.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add to say, just like devil's advocate too, is like definitely getting the person at the top to buy in is very important. But also sometimes that person at the top might overpromise and say, yes, let's do a sustainable capsule with this brand. And then you get to it and like the exterior material is good. And they're like, actually, we can't make the lining out of anything that's sustainable. So it's like, I think there needs to be communication from top down that's like really thought through.
Totally agree, yeah.
Yeah.
The missing middle, we call it, the doers.
That's great. I wanted to move into marketing when it comes to working with brands and marketing collaborations. And Matty, I wanted to start with you actually because you've had some really brilliant collaborations that because, and Liz, you pointed this out earlier, you worked with a big brand, and that's amazing when you get to work with a global brand that has incredible reach. And I think it was Converse that you said that they brought in like a marketing team that had a big budget and they did videos, and so if you could tell us about that experience, and then I wanted to hear about other collaborations here with Maria and Hannes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think just one, with our partners, we try and make sure that first and foremost that there's mission alignment, like that they're supporting the mission of Sky Farm Universe, but really relying on them to get the halo effect of their customer. You know, that's why we work with these brands. We worked with Converse. They were very generous and gave us a large marketing budget where we were able to not create just hype content about like a new shoe coming out. We put it all towards making a 6-episode series with a National Geographic videographer who chronicled the life on the farm of regenerative agriculture. We actually said, maybe to a bit of a fault, but like we barely featured the shoes whatsoever in it. You know, it was all about supporting the mission, and it was all about getting someone on Converse's feed to be talking, thinking, hearing about regenerative agriculture, and that's something that's different, and that's really like what we're trying to do with these partners, and they've been like very supportive. And then also just like snowballing off of Converse, you know, we've worked with Nike and working with them and Dover Street Market and Cause. We created these Air Forces and then a workwear capsule, and I think our Instagram grew from 20,000 followers to 30,000 followers pretty much overnight. So I like to call it, or we like to call it kind of like a Trojan horse effect. You know, you see Nike, Cause, Dover Street, and then Sky High Farm. Like, what's Sky High Farm? And then now all of a sudden it's in dialogue with them.
Do you, so to the innovators, do you feel like you have power when it comes to collaborating in that way, like the marketing way? Like you seem to have a little bit of, I mean, you had an alignment of mission, so it wasn't to say that Sky High Farm necessarily had a lot of power, but you had an aligned mission. Do you feel like you have those chips to play with a brand? Like, if you're going to use this material, you need to include some of this, you need to include this backstory, or you need to include this imagery, or, you know, do you feel like are they interested in that?
Yeah, with Bananatex, we experienced different cases. Maybe the more premium a brand is, the less easy it is to come up with some ideas when you would like to have some product branding or communication manuals. But overall, I think if a brand decides to work with a material like that, then it's very obvious that they would also choose to communicate the story. Where is it coming from, how it is processed, and so on and so forth. So we are quite fortunate with that, and we like to include the messaging and the journey we did with Bananatex into all those collaborations, because it really makes sense and it's the right thing to do in our view.
Oh, sorry. Any of you, all of you could speak about highlights of collaborations. Matty, you've mentioned some, but maybe you have more. Maria, if you have, well, I know you have a highlight, so if you could share your collaboration.
Sure. I mean, we're right at the beginning of our real product journey. I mean, we're just getting into making real consumer products now. So we showed our first shoe on the catwalk this Paris Fashion Week in September with Ghani. That's what I'm wearing. And so that's really exciting. But I would say, like, in general, we rely on the brand to let us know what they prefer in terms of marketing, because we want us to be a service and useful to them, and it can be on their terms. Oh, okay. Although we were thrilled to have been mentioned. Yeah.
Ghani's the new patron saint of sustainability. I feel like it was Stella, and now there's like make room for Ghani. They're just, you know. So how long did that collaboration take when you started with Ghani?
It was pretty quick. I think we did from start to finish in 5 months. So
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, and like we got a really slow start at the beginning too. So I feel like the real work happened within 3 or 4 months.
And how about everybody else? What do you think about those sorts of timelines when you're working with a new material, like not the usual? Is it like a year sometimes, or?
I mean, I think we had our first conversation with Bananatex in February and confirmed that we were going to do something in March, and then we had a full capsule ready by June. So it was really quick, which I thought was amazing. But then with bigger brands, it definitely takes a lot longer, I would say.
Actually, so I want to get back to Bananatex and color, because right now the colors I've seen back there, the neutrals are beautiful. I mean, it's not just neutral; you also have blue. But has it been hard to work with colors to find ones that are non-toxic and compatible?
Yeah, I think there's not many solutions in the market yet. We started out with GOTS certified dye stuff and Oeko-Tex certified dye stuff. Now we work with some natural dyes where we can make certain colors, obviously not all of them, but a few. And we also try to collaborate with all the innovators in that field, Our Carbon, Living Ink, Nature Coatings, who make pigments from very natural sources, and we really
There's some
enjoy.
out there today.
Yeah, we really enjoy those collaborations, and hopefully can make more of that in the future, because it's really having a huge impact, as I said before.
And color is this is such like an obvious thing to say, but it's so important for designers. Like all brands, but like designers just love to see color, and so that's like a big piece. And how about you with getting to color?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult because all of the new color innovations, usually they just do one color or a small range of colors. So you have to have a lot of different suppliers, and you can't have the full color range available in ethical dyes. So, we offer that as a possibility, but we are not limited to that. Although our process in itself uses less water because we're able to implement the dye while our material's still in a liquid. So, you get a lot of reduction in terms of the water use because of that. But, we want to enable our customers to make beautiful product. That's, kind of one of our main goals. So we always try to source new dyes, but not everything is available, and we supplement those with conventional.
Liz, I wanted to ask you about giving advice to innovators and matchmaking, basically. Like, if an innovator is looking to get their material out there, their yarn, their fiber, their dyes even, like, how would you suggest they go about finding brands or connecting with brands? The right brands, I should say.
Yeah, I think the first thing that I like to do is look at who has money. So if you've just read that brand X just had a bad quarter, maybe not today. Maybe talk to them in another 6 months when things turn around. But trying to get blood from a stone when a brand is struggling is my first bit of advice. And then I think another one is, if possible, and Maria has beautifully circumvented it, so I'm going to give that caveat. But if possible, if your material innovation can fit within the existing machinery within a supply chain, like if you've come up with the best new bio glue ever, but it doesn't go into glue application machine in Vietnam that everybody has, then you're probably not going to get a PO. So like those are two kind of important things. And then the other one that I always say is solve a problem that the brand has, right? Walk in listening, not just talking about the invention that you're so excited about, and we know you're excited because it's your baby, but listen to them. What do they really need as a brand, and are you going to be solving a problem they have? In which case, then they're really going to be motivated to work with you, just like that missing middle people, right? They're just like, oh, that's going to fix the thing that I need fixed. I'm going to work with you. So those are three things that I would say.
Did you want to add?
Sure. I mean, just in response to that, so with our process, we're not really directly fitting into the system. We're kind of replacing a big chunk of it. So it's an advantage, but it's also a difficulty because we do have to get with a brand member who understands that. And it's not just like a one-sentence explanation. You can fit this into your supply chain the same way as the existing material. It's a little bit more complex to us, but for us, so not everybody understands that, especially with busy workers in brands who don't have time to they just want to check the boxes that they've been given and they don't want to envision. So, or they can't, or they just don't have time. So it is a challenge, but I think when brands do get that, then it is an advantage for us.
And you bring an advantage, you bring a value because you're actually cutting out other steps within the things that they would have to do anyway. So you're actually saving them time, right?
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
So this is my last question, and it will be for everyone to think about and consider. But we've probably most everybody in this room, we read that 2023 most people didn't meet their sustainability goals. A lot of people have put things on hold. It feels a little bleak right now. We also know that not a lot of these new innovative materials have scaled, or they're in the process of scaling, and everyone's trying to raise money. And then there's always someone who's saying that the investments are down. They're not necessarily down for innovative solutions, but they are down for other areas. So I'm just wondering, what do you think the holdup is? Do you think it's because, price, colors that we're talking about? What do you think the holdup is of getting things into market? Especially when we know that brands are well behind on sustainability and their own goals. Whoever wants to start.
Well, in addition to the price problem that I was referring to before, I think patience is also something that is needed. I mean, the transformation of this industry cannot happen within a few years. I think the expectations should be lowered a little bit from all sides, and the transition hopefully will come. It maybe take some years more than people think, but it will.
Yeah, I think that being patient is really important, and we were
That's
talking.
so hard.
It's very hard, and we were talking about this. It's really hard to be patient when everybody's trained as a consumer to keep buying more and more and more. And you have all these bigger companies that are just you need this new product this week, you need this next one, and it's just constant. So part of the patience is not just with the materials and everything that we're putting out, but it's also about being patient and retraining customers to start purchasing in a different way.
Well, have we done too much hype? Do you think we've hyped this new sustainability thing too much, and then not everything was ready to go? We were trying to set the table, but not everything was ready to be served.
I think, the hype's been great, because when I started working in sustainable fashion, nobody even really knew what it was. So, and there were only 3 of us brands looking for sustainable materials at the time. So it's been good that it's more. I think the most positive change that I saw came when I saw Gucci implemented rules for its suppliers. And at the time, Gucci was kind of at the height of its power with Alessandro Michele. And I think that quietly turned the mills into being really receptive to the idea. I think the hype with the general population has been a tricky one because, first of all, the patience thing. Second of all, sustainability in fashion is, as everybody knows here, it's so complex. It's not a soundbite. And I think people lose patience with that as well. And I think that we'll find our balance a little bit, I hope. We're just going to keep doing our work.
Yeah.
And I think, all the brands had all the best intentions with these targets, and they were the right thing to do. But I think there's missing infrastructure, as you kind of hit upon too, maybe the machinery that they need to produce something doesn't even exist at scale right now. And there was also, I think, a lack of understanding of how financially that was ever going to work. Who was going to fund it, and I think the brands were just we're going to do this, but then everyone else was well, are you going to help us? And they were kind of no. Okay. So I think those things happen, but I think it's the brands are recognizing it, and I think they're saying oops, my bad, but now we're going to try to be better partners from what I have seen.
Yeah, and there was also a couple of early stories in sustainable materials that the companies took a really long time to turn profitable, and they got a lot of investment, and we've seen in the investment community a little bit of a people take everything with a grain of salt because of that, and I think it's been a sour note, but I don't think it could have been avoided. I mean, everybody who is doing something for the first time is going to make a mistake.
That's true.
Can I just add one more thing too?
Yeah, you can finish it up, Liz.
I will. And everyone's like, I just want to go to the drinks, but I think like one of the issues I see with brands is when they try to boil the ocean. They're like, okay, we're gonna stop using coal in our factories. We're also gonna be using regenerative inputs, and we're also gonna do recycling, and we're also gonna do upcycling, and like, you gotta pick a lane sometimes. Just be good at one thing. Be like, if you're the brand that's really awesome at that, then do that. But I think that's another reason why we haven't achieved what we said we were going to.
Actually, I do want to add on to that because that's a really good point.
Everyone wants to go to the bar, Thomasine.
Not that I wanted the last word. I know, sorry. But like in an early conversation meeting a few years ago with some folks at the Gap and wondering where their heads were with innovation and sustainable materials and whatever. And to your point, they were just like, we're picking a lane. Their lane is water usage. We want to reduce water usage, and we want to focus on farming and regenerative farming because cotton is our #1 fiber that we use. So that makes perfect sense. So they're not going to necessarily meander out in another lane for, a different innovation. That's just like distracting for them while they're trying to get this thing nailed down. So anyway, I think that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you guys for those awesome interviews.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.